Testing, testing.
Yes, loud and clear, Robert.
Well, that's good. Can you introduce yourself and give a little background of your experience in the mountains and in glacier country?
Yeah, my name is Dave Skinner, and I've hiked in Olympic National Park. I basically started in the late 50s, but didn't get real serious until the early 70s. And I would usually put in 500 to 600 miles each season, uh, uh, exploring all the trails and off trail. And then in the mid 70s, I first climbed Mount Olympus in 1974. And and then I would stop by the research station there and talk with the grad students or whoever was working there. In 75, I met Rich Marriott, who was the station manager up there for a number of years, and ended up working for him in 76 just as a volunteer. And the studies were ablation, how much melts and accumulates during the course of the season. They had a long history of study on Blue Glacier on Mount Olympus. So I would always go in there every year and work for Rich. And then at one point for a couple of seasons, I was station manager in charge of glacial observations. We'd drill in ablation stakes. Everything was done pretty much by hand in those days. And keep track of the weather and document that. In the mid 70s, the glacier actually surged so that the volume was probably some of the greatest in recent times. And then since that time, it's been this gradual recession or reduction in the volume of ice to the point now where it's probably 40% of its volume has decreased. And it's very significant in just the way we move about the glacier now. It used to be you could take the short trail up to the terminus of the Blue from Glacier Meadows, and that route is just I tried to do it a couple of years ago, and we had planned to pack a bunch of research debris up that way, and it just became impossible. It was dangerous just to try to solo climb it without a rope. So, and that was a route I took years ago and just walked across the ice. There might have been a short scramble to get to the trail. The old standby route was to the upper end of the glacier, to the upper moraine trail. And we used to descend on kind of a rough trail that went down, and then you hit snow, and basically you just slide down the rest of the way till you were down on the ice. And even that route now is, people still are doing it, but it's very treacherous. If you fell there, you'd end up in the hospital. So we had to find another route completely where we go traverse further up glacier on rock, and then drop down to the glacier itself. And that's really the most dramatic change. It seems like the upper mountain, which I'm on every year, it seems like like this year, it seemed like there was this substantial amount of snow at the higher elevation, say 7,000 feet and higher, up to 8,000 feet. And the route we took through the cirque between Middle and West Peak, the crevasses were pretty much still closed up, and we could just ascend straight up, which isn't always the case. Sometimes we have to zigzag through that area quite a bit. So it looks like the upper mountain's getting more snow, but the lower glacier, not so much. It's melted way back with the ice exposed earlier in the season. We used to have stakes in the glacier 1 through 8, and it would generally be mid-July, it would melt back to about L3. It would be patchy in there. And this year and the past several years, it's already back at L6, further up glacier. So,
What about temperature overall? Do you have any data?
data would be had by University of Washington, I think, primarily. I don't know if the Park Service has been keeping tabs on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, we used to keep the weather morning and evening up there when we manned the station.
Oh, okay, because that would be interesting, right? To correlate temperature with volume.
Yeah, and I don't know if recently they are collecting temperature data. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Did the funding for this kind of study kind of move elsewhere since there's been more of a discussion of global weirding or global warming, whatever you want to call it, since that's become a funding target?
Yeah, it seems like people are more interested in Antarctica and Alaska, the glaciers there, and blue glaciers kind of been put on the side, at least by the university. So the Park Service had been doing some ablation studies up there for maybe the last 10 years or so. I didn't see ablation stakes up there this year, so I don't know if they melted out or if they're reestablishing those. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to them. So,
Do you have any thoughts about why that is? Is that just sort of a popular, I don't know, set of assumptions that guides that these days, or would you like to comment on that? Or
as far as money for up there, you mean?
yeah,
Or?
well, why does that research money go to Alaska, for example? I mean, I can imagine, but because it's in the news,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, and I think that has probably a lot to do with it, and it's a matter of interest. Somebody has to propose a grant and get funding for the project. The last time they did that was in the mid 80s. They got 3 years of field work and 4 years of studying the data.
I see.
So that was probably 85 to 87. And I was station manager 86, 87.
What would you like to see happen from here on out as far as gathering data and correlating that into some kind of bigger picture?
Because the data goes back so far there, it was one of the most continuously studied glaciers in the lower 48, if not the most. It seems like it would be a good idea to keep track of that data and see where it goes from there.
Well, now the Olympics are not at the latitude of northern Canada or Alaska, and this area is referred to as temperate rainforest, meaning it's not too cold. It's kind of warm, actually, when you think about the marine layer and the water kind of keeping temperature within a certain range. So are these glaciers particularly fragile in general?
Yeah.
And what if we are seeing some sort of warming, you know, are they more vulnerable than, say, Mount Rainier glaciers or Alaskan glaciers or something along those lines?
Yeah, I would think so. I think it's because of the large amount of precipitation that happens. And then if it's cold enough, of course, it's snow. And so far, that's what's kept these glaciers going. But they're definitely receding. I drop down the Humes. I usually, from Mount Olympus, I will go to Queets Basin, so I'll cross 3 glaciers to get there. And this year, descending the Humes Glacier, and then in fact, I guess it was last year, I had to find a new route because the route I usually went to go up this one draw and drop off was now becoming a lake. And I spent about an hour and a half trying to find the route. So, and it was a completely new route. I'd never been that way. So, yeah, it's the Humes. You can definitely tell. I've got an old picture that's a big poster-sized picture showing the Humes Glacier, where it comes to a point where it's right at the edge of a cliff, and now it's way back from that, and the lakes form behind that. So, yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Yeah, it's your home, and it's yeah, I can't imagine having to move from your home where you grew up, where all your memories are. Uh, I mean, humans, of course, can adapt to different things, and of course, a lot of people would not think much of, oh, they can move somewhere else or something like that. But um, you lose a lot of who you are and what you are when you have to do that. Islands in the South Pacific is another example where sea rise is complicating what they do. I was just in Fiji in February, and the local islanders out in the Yasawa Islands talked about how things have changed, and of course they get cyclones there that create a lot of damage, and yeah, they're watching how things are changing for them.
So how does the Elwha look these days?
To me, it's just exciting to see the clarity of the river, because the lower river below the dams was almost never clear. It would clear up sometimes, but not very often. And now, more often than not, you drive across the Highway 101 bridge, and I always look down, and it's running clear. And then, of course, it's the whole ecosystem that surrounds that. That's just a visual, but hopefully the fish are going to keep working their way up and spawning up the river, and creating a lot more fish.
Do you think the public has much understanding these days of the upper alpine environments or the riparian environments, or are kids spending too much time behind their computers these days to care much about that? Where do you think the public's attention is, and would you like it on this area more?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of times you'll talk about Mount Olympus and they go, "Oh, where's that?" And it's kind of our backyard. And so, yeah, I think unless people have an interest in hiking and getting out in the wilderness, then I think they don't seem to have much of an idea of what's back there.
So is that a loss?
Yeah, I think so. Um, yeah, just because it's such an amazing place. I'd hate to see all of a sudden with climate change that the rainforest dries up and all the trees die, and that kind of thing. And then it gets down to, I mean, Port Angeles gets its water from the Elwha, and if and there's years where they say to watch your water usage, because the snow season wasn't very good that year. So, yeah, we're all connected in this, I think.